complaining about the Union flag and saying that it's a sign of national. What's your response to them?
Well, in this village, best thing is for them to get out of it. I'm being quite blunt. That's how I feel. I've lived in this village 60-odd years, 62 years, nearly 63 years. We've never had this problem. In our early days, we all helped each other. No one went against anybody. We agreed things. We used to have meetings up the village hall, as it was then. And it was all OK, but all of a sudden we've got newcomers coming in, and I'm not against it because we've got quite a few, and a lot of them are damn nice people, but we've just got one or two who are a bit anti. And, you know, they don't do nothing much for the village, but they soon put the spoke in when we want to do something like that. That's my feeling.
But you think we should be proud of our national symbols, proud of our national flag?
Definitely, yeah. I was in the army. I only did national service, and when I finished national service, I was ill for a while actually. But anyhow, and then I went and joined the prison service, and that's why I've worked in things which, you know, the flag is important to us. We should always be proud of it. Not like these people that say we shouldn't have it because it might upset somebody because it's not their flag. Well, so what? You know, it's our flag, so we should be proud of it. Sod the rest of them. Let's excuse my... but that's me.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has flown to Berlin to agree terms of a new historic UK-Germany treaty with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. It's expected the Prime Minister will tell Mr Scholz that he's focused on making sure the UK moves past Brexit and rebuilds relationships with European partners. The new bilateral treaty is expected to boost business and trade, deepen defence and security cooperation and increase joint action on illegal migration. This morning, the Prime Minister warned the October budget will be painful, but says the country will have to accept short-term pain for long-term good. During his speech outside Number 10, Sir Keir Starmer warned things will get worse before they get better. And he said next week's return to Parliament will not be business as usual. He also addressed the recent riots, saying they showed the cracks in our society after 14 years of populism and failure. The Prime Minister reiterated economic growth is the government's top priority. The Ministry of Justice has confirmed that only 100 spaces are left in male prisons in England and Wales. It comes as the number of people sent to prison has reached record levels. In July, the government set out legislation to reduce the amount of time inmates must spend in jail before they're automatically released, from 50% of their sentence to 40%, in a bid to manage overcrowding. A Ministry of Justice spokesperson says the new government inherited a justice system in crisis and has been forced into taking difficult but necessary action to ensure we can keep locking up dangerous criminals and protect the public. And a man's been charged with murder after officers stopped him at Notting Hill Carnival. Detectives had issued an appeal to locate Kamar Williams, who was wanted in connection with the fatal stabbing of a 53-year-old man. He'll appear in court tomorrow. That's as 3 men have been arrested over the stabbing of a 32-year-old mother at Notting Hill Carnival, which left her in a critical condition. The woman was attending the family day on Sunday with her young child when she was attacked. The Metropolitan Police says it appears she became caught up in the middle of an altercation between 2 groups of men, but it's unclear if they were known to her. In total, 349 arrests were made over the Carnival weekend for a range of offences, including violence, sexual assaults and 60 attacks on police officers. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. Now it's time for the headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Wednesday's newspapers with three top comedians. I'm Simon Evans. Tonight I'm joined by Kerry Marks and Nick Dixon.
Hey.
Evening, gentlemen. You both well?
I'm really well, thank you.
Excellent.
And a pleasure to be back with more stories. So many stories.
And you're not mourning?
They never end. Why would I be mourning?
You're wearing a black tie, I just noticed.
No, that's not a rule. I don't think so.
Okay?
No, I think they can have rules here.
He's
Anything black at all.
mourning his reputation in the comedy world. Now he's on GBNews.
Yes, that's true. But you, of course, are in all black like Johnny Cash because you're mourning for...
I'm all the way in.
Because it's a world lost in tragedy.
Yeah, well, I'm all the way into GB, so I'm constantly in mourning.
Let's take a look at our front pages, see whether there's much to mourn about. The Times, German deal to turn the corner on Brexit. I thought we'd done that. The Guardian, time for UK to turn corner on Brexit, says Starmer. Big serious picture of Oasis. The Daily Mail, finally Starmer comes clean. He'll soak the middle class. Daily Telegraph, Starmer's tax alert for Middle England. Metro, stars align, the wait is over, that's Oasis. And finally, Daily Star, ET invaders would wipe us all out. Well, those were your front pages. So, Kerry, we will open up with the Daily Mail.
Which tells us, finally, Starmer comes clean. He will soak the middle classes after repeatedly denying tax rises before election. He didn't repeatedly deny them. He just said it 50 times. That's not repeatedly. It's quite a few, though, isn't it, really? But then, of course, it wasn't his fault because he found a black hole, which is, of course, the phrase of the age. And we heard his speech today from the Rose Garden at number 10, which wasn't very rosy, but certainly full of thorns. And he basically repeated the word pain, pain, pain over and over again, so much so that even when he talks about closing loopholes on non-doms, I've started to think he might mean anyone who's not a dominatrix, just to increase the whipping we're all about to get. Of course, this has been done before. We saw, Cameron, when he came in, warned that we went into all the austerity and he said he'd found this big hole and so on. But this doesn't feel quite the same. And it also feels like he's fairly certain he's going to have 10 years in power, I think. And when he's talking about 10 years of this pain, and then it's going to get better, I wonder how that feels for some of the pensioners who are losing their fuel allowance, many of whom will wonder if they've actually got 10 years to wait.
I mean, it is... It's hard to hear for at least two reasons, Nick. One, there's a sort of suggestion that there's been 14 years of partying and hedonism, and now we're having to pay the bill and clean up, which hasn't been my experience of the last 14 years. And secondly, there is this kind of implication that, that he's inherited like a completely unknowable catastrophe that he couldn't possibly have anticipated.
Yes, this black hole in the finances that he didn't know about, which gives him carte blanche to do anything he wants, according to people like James O'Brien. Yeah. But yeah, it's incredibly grim. Things only get worse. He's wasting the Oasis reunion, the good vibes we could have. It's an open goal that he's missed. You could go back to Britpop and Tony Blair vibes, but he hasn't got that. It's all grim, and it's also vague. So this idea, it's going to be tough for a while, but what's going to be at the end? If you're going to diet, it's hard, but you think, well, there'll be weight loss at the end. But what is at the end? Some very vague plan for growth. And I'm not convinced that he has this plan for growth. The other thing was he didn't mention immigration at all. There was a particularly appalling part to me where he talked about people don't feel safe to walk down the street in his country, but the sentences following that were because of riots, TVs and the cars on fire, and there's not space in the prison. It's like, no, isn't it largely because of illegal immigration and other kinds of immigration and two-tier policing and things like that and general crime rates? So again, he's constantly blaming the basically white British rioters, nothing about immigration and nothing about the costs of immigration either, because that's, talk about a financial black hole, immigration combined with our ridiculous welfare system and social housing, there's some money you could save right there.
And 14 billion going on to end the strikes with the rail and
I was going to say, he's already, I mean, before even giving the speech, he's already absolutely shoveling money at unions who now know that they can immediately hold the country to ransom. And as you say, the riots arguably were a gift to him if this is what he wants to do with them, because he's been presented with a way of talking about immigration or anything else that the broader public feel unhappy about, and just presenting them as he's going to keep this evil off the streets.
There's all these justifications, because the justification with this is that is to get Britain running again, the trains running again and so on. But there's, of course, the other side is you're giving way to the unions and they'll say, well, this works.
On to the cover of the Times now, Nick.
Yeah, they have that German deal to turn the corner on Brexit. As you said, you thought we'd already done it, but no, we're going back. We all know that the blob want to go back into Europe, but this is a reset. Don't worry, it's just a reset. But it's a treaty he's working on with Scholz about trade, defence, illegal migration, and he wants it to be a model for other EU countries. And the question is, well, what will they make us do in response, you know, to get access to the single market? Are Brussels going to punish us? Germany want this youth mobility thing. They want citizens under 30 to be allowed to live and work in the UK for up to 3 years. All sounds a bit like free movement, doesn't it? It's an interesting...
Although, would that be... I mean, would our kids get the same on the other side of the channel? That might be quite popular, broadly speaking, with young people, if it was reciprocal, I think. You're
saying our kids. Obviously, I don't have any, so I'm not bothered. But and also, Andrew Neil pointed out a good point as well on Twitter that Starmer's at -16 approval and Scholz has bad approval as well. That's just a side point. Some might argue Starmer's, you know,
is that where they get on with each
position.
other, then?
They're both unpopular.
I would quite like to see, though, freedom of movement for kids under 30, such as mine, you know, who can go. And also freedom of movement for me to go and retire in Spain.
So you mean for everyone, then?
Well, no, roughly between 30 and 60.
I just leave out the middle.
I don't want people...
With respect, Simon, you're the problem. Because you've got to... When they came up with the idea of vaccine passports, I just said, right, I'm never leaving the country again. And that's what the kind of man you have to be.
Yeah. But it's basically they found a black hole with Brexit, and they have to fill it up now. Part of it seems a bit pragmatic, and that maybe Brexit was rushed, and there are things we can do just to improve it a little bit. But the same time, it doesn't feel like it feels like this is incrementally moving back into where we were before, and it's a kind of friends with benefits that we're looking at here.
I'm not sure how that's
going to work out.
I know you probably haven't revised this, but airport cannabis smuggling soars as drug is legalised abroad. There does seem to be a sort of move around Britain generally to ignore cannabis smoking. Have you noticed that?
No, I haven't. Why do you look at me? What are you trying to say?
He's most of the problem.
As you narrow your eyes.
Airport cannabis. I think it's a special kind of cannabis they grow in airports.
Well, it's coming in suitcases, apparently. I just noticed, it may just be the hot summer days, but
you just noticed that you can't...
London lately, I seem to walk through...
Lately? It's been like the last 5 years. You can't leave the house without basically getting stoned just from one breath. It's disgusting.
It just smells of crime, doesn't it? Anyway, one more. We have one more paper at least, Telegraph, Kerry.
OK. Smells of crime.
Smells of crime.
Hate crime measures back on agenda despite fears for free speech, which of course is always this balancing act of... We already have laws. We have plenty of laws, and it's really just a case of instigating them. A typical example was a couple of years ago when a group of men drove through Golders Green in London with megaphones shouting to seriously harm, physically harm and kill Jewish women. And the police know who they are. They haven't arrested them, but that's within the laws that we already have. We don't need new laws for it. And this is opening the gate for the blasphemy laws, which I think should be a major concern to people. There's a difference between actual crime and a clear threat and speech that causes harm, which is what we seem to be obsessed by now. And you've got to remember back to the Blair government, they also did this. They brought out loads of... there was all the database society that they had, and loads of laws against free speech. And, recently, they mentioned here is there's a guy who's on police file because he whistled Bob the Builder at his neighbour who felt it was racist, which I'm not quite sure how that could be, whether he comes from Builderland or something. But
I know, he perceived racial hatred, so you can just perceive it about... I perceived it from both of you as I came onto this show, and there's nothing you can do.
The law's not out yet, mate.
But Suella Braverman got rid of that because she brought in guidance to get rid of that kind of nonsense, and they've scrapped that because it's Labour, and it's like, OK, scrap the higher education free speech bill, scrap that, bring in this Islamophobia definition, which is far too robust and ridiculous. And, they claim it's to stop tension. They think tensions have been ignored between Jewish people and Muslims because of this guidance is making things slip through the net or something. It sounded tenuous to me.
It was quite interesting at the Edinburgh Fringe. I noticed that, this time last year, I was interviewed by various people as a stand-up comedian. Did I think it was going to have a chilling effect on comedy? The SNP's slightly... weaponised. They've got a really turbo-boosted hate speech thing, and I said, well, I don't know. We'll see, but I don't. Well, anyway, the only case that came close was Reginald D. Hunter. Was accused of it, by a Jewish couple, and on behalf of a Jewish couple for his jokes against Jewish action, which was kind of ironic, given that everyone was anticipating that it had been brought in to protect Muslims.
But I think it also backfired, though.
Well, exactly.
I think it backfired in another sense, in that the police, because of those accusations, they didn't want to make an arrest with anyone. So I think they probably ignored most accusations that came out from the Fringe this year.
But it does seem to me as well, I will say this, that part of the thing about Brexit was that it was supposed to stop Westminster politicians having a kind of, plausible deniability. Well, what can we do? It's EU rule. And now they're just endlessly seeking to re-legislate when, as you say, the legislation exists. They will find any excuse not to simply act.
Yep.
Finally, we have the Daily Star.
Yes, this is
More like
E.T. Yeah, E.T. invaders would wipe us all out. And, of course, it's the space boffins, Simon.
Yes.
It's always the boffins, but these are Indian boffins who have predicted that an extraterrestrial program would most likely destroy Earth. So should be a bigger story, really. Should be on all the papers, because that's big, isn't it? Earth being destroyed. I mean, everyone likes Oasis, but I'd have...
urgent but not important, or important but not urgent.
We need to bring out hate speech laws from aliens.
Yeah, I perceive this as hate speech against my race, the human race.
We should have some banners up on the edge of the solar system.
Yesterday was AI was going to kill us all, wasn't it? Today is the aliens.
Is a hate-free zone. Anyway, that's the front pages covered. Join us after the break for the little black cloud called Keir and a very French coup in France. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Michael found the recipe for success without going to university. Instead, he went looking for answers inside of a kitchen. The 22-year-old has just finished a level 2 course in professional cookery at UCB, a college in Birmingham.
When I started UCB, I was expecting to be so intense from day one, but it's not. It sort of builds up, so to the point where you get comfortable. And building that comfort is a huge part of becoming a chef, because you need to be comfortable being in your own skin.
This week, tens of thousands of students get their A-level results. The college wants them to remember university isn't the only option after school, and West Midlands Mayor Richard Parker agrees.
University is the right route for lots of our young people, but there are other pathways to getting access to qualifications that will give young people the skills they need to succeed in life.
Further education principal Rosa Wells says apprenticeships and technical courses are also great routes to a career.
Here at University College Birmingham, we offer vocational courses. These are hands-on technical courses that can give people a different opportunity, something different to school. So we've got brilliant facilities that really give students industry standard training.
A skills shortage across the UK means youngsters learning trades are desperately needed. 36% of job vacancies are due to shortages. The Labour government's new body, Skills England, has been created to bring training providers and businesses together with local and national authorities plus unions to target trade gaps and regional requirements. Michael's now finishing his qualification. Where he goes next is down to him.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. With me still GB News' answer to Bert and Ernie. It's Kerry Marks and Nick Dixon. Nick and Kerry,
the audience,
both been doing extraordinary things during the break.
I've been fine.
Mirror, Nick, on the aftermath of the Notting Hill riots this weekend, police say there were several outbreaks of dancing and jollity in the stabbings.
Extremely joyful, extremely beautiful day, apart from the many, many crimes. So Notting Hill Carnival sees 5 stabbings, 230 arrests and police injuries amid massive turnout. So it's just this absurd thing we have to go through every year. Police say it takes months to plan, and I think their tweets have been like a cry for help that they don't want to do this anymore. Because we had 3 people in life-threatening condition from being stabbed. One was a mother who was with her child. But you still have Sky News saying what a beautiful atmosphere it was. And you have 37 attacks on emergency service workers. Imagine attacking an emergency service worker. And to me, it's not like driving where you go, oh, it's dangerous, but there's an upside. We can't live in agricultural times. There's no upside. I can't see the upside.
Well, I suppose there is commercial activity. I mean, to the extent that you say, but I don't know how much.
I'm glad you brought that up, because guess how much it cost last year to put this on? It was almost 11.8 million. It was 11.7 and a half. You'd round it up to 11.8 million. I looked at all the costs. We're paying that. That's insane.
I mean, this is the thing. I've seen somebody say online today that it creates £400 million worth of, I don't know, that would be £400 per person. Well, I mean, just people spending money, which, I mean, I guess is good, right, in West London, if everyone's buying loads of warm cans of Red Stripe or something. But I don't see where everyone's spending 400 quid unless it's on
just
hotels.
Feathers. Yeah. There are so many feathers. You know, one woman had a dress with so many feathers on, I think just all the homeless people in the country could have slept on it quite comfortably. Yesterday the police, of course, were saying that they're tired. And I don't think the police have ever said something that made me feel so much for them. More than any statement they've ever made, we're tired of this.
We're tired.
Look, it's, in many ways, compared with the riots, this is a worse record of physical damage. But at the same time...
I mean, to break it down to be...
well, sorry, I'll just finish the point. Is that you can do it that way. On the other hand, you could say it doesn't really compare because more people had at least wholesome fun at this than they did at the riots. But on the other hand, it's a really poor record for what's meant to be a party.
Yeah, and it's not the worst year by any means. But just what I was going to say, if you break down 230 arrests, a lot of those are for drug possession and stuff that, you know, maybe, I mean, these are crimes, but they're not crimes on the same level as the violence.
There was the stabbings, there was an attack with a corrosive substance, 8 sexual offences, 9 instances of violence with injury.
2 people in life-threatening condition right now. So
it is serious. Yeah, fair enough. Do we know, by the way, and I'm sorry to throw this at you, but do we know how this mother got stabbed? Well, I mean, that just sounds insane.
Well, I heard on Sky that it was a fight was going on and she was trying to stop it or something. That's what they said. That comes from Sky News, so may well be false.
Horrific. Back to Keir now in the sun, Kerry. I say the sun, barely visible behind the vast grey cloud of Keirness.
It's a black hole, not a cloud. I won't let mindless thugs run riot. Crime has consequences and I'm getting tough. Vows kiss. You know, I actually think he's enjoying it. I think he's really enjoying all his tough talk. And it's interesting, he says, I'm getting tough, not we. It doesn't seem to be much about the party. So Keir Starmer has insisted he won't let mindless thugs run riot. I don't know whether he's going to let mindful thugs run riot, maybe.
Doing their meditation.
Yes.
I'm so mindful about my thuggery.
He said this summer's carnage was worse than 2011. Those people throwing rocks, torching cars, making threats, etc., etc., etc. They were betting on gaming. That he's saying they were gaming on the fact that the laws weren't strong enough, and I doubt those consequences were really in their minds. You know, I think they were in the moment feeling angry and doing whatever they were doing, and you know, he's talking about how
he says they're mindless. I mean, if they're mindless, they're mindless. So they aren't betting on anything. They're just mindless.
Yes, that's right.
Pick your theory of mind.
He contradicts himself very much there, and blames you know, everything, all the usual things, but not that people are getting more and more concerned about immigration, about illegal immigration, about increased stabbings and terrorist incidents, about 10 months of seeing people marching in the streets shouting Islamic phrases that call for blood and death and carrying flags of different terrorist groups. I'm not saying this is any excuse for violence. It is absolutely not. But there's other reasons why tension is growing in the country, and I think we're ignoring it.
This narrative of Starmer's that it was gaming the system is so false. It's so odd to reality. The reality was people were angry some kids had been murdered in Southport, and it was an emotional outburst. And it wasn't entirely logical, perhaps, and you shouldn't do violence, but that's what it was. It was the very opposite of scheming and planning. People who do, I believe, act in a way that games the system are the people who know that they're in the sort of protected classes. I mean, that guy that hit the poor young woman at Nando's with the plate, surely he was thinking, oh, I can do what I want. See, that's what it seemed to me. He finished his dinner, the police laughed with him, the girl was told to shut up, basically. That's someone who's gaming the system, thinking, oh, I'll be fine. Since when the white working class people think, oh, yeah, we'll be fine, the police won't come down on us? It's absolute nonsense. He's made it up completely. And if you can contrast it with the Notting Hill carnage, then it's completely absurd, because why are these people thugs and the people at that event are not thugs?
Well, also...
Just the twerking? What's the difference?
People are desperately trying to keep this story alive, but I don't know how much longer they'll be able to do so. The aggression in Manchester Airport, which is 3 weeks now, and these guys have still not been charged.
And nothing happening with it.
And we know who they are, and I mean, the optics on that, I hate using optics, but what else can you call it? I mean, it's absurd.
It's hard not to go with the two-tier thing when you have examples like that. But also he's saying that we've inherited not just an economic black hole, but a society black hole, and that's everything's black holes. Actually, he has sight problems, and he's going to discover a little black mark in his eye somewhere.
Political chaos in France now, Nick. Must be Tuesday. This is in the Telegraph.
Yeah, that's particularly bad even by French standards. So it's Emmanuel Macron sparks chaos by refusing to appoint PM from left-wing coalition. So we know that they already tried to they use shenanigans to keep the right out. Over 200 people resign to avoid splitting the vote and giving National Rally an absolute majority. But now that leaves them with this problem of the left-wing coalition, New Popular Front. And Macron's claiming, well, they wouldn't be able to govern effectively because they'd have a majority of more than 350 MPs against it, effectively preventing it from acting. So I'm just going to not form any government. The people are saying this is completely mad. It's unprecedented. It's really behind the mask of the where the liberal Democrat people, very much like the Democrats in America, they go on about democracy, then they act a completely different way. We hear a lot about the peaceful transfer of power regarding Trump. This doesn't seem particularly like a transfer of power at all.
It's always the grown-ups were in the room when about Macron. It's like, I mean, this reminds me, to be honest, of me trying to avoid making a decision about some family. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we go to your mother's, then they'll be annoyed, and if we go to your sister's, then they'll be annoyed. So maybe if we don't do anything, the whole weekend will go past. And
is that what you do in the end, just leave it?
It's like Christmas or something. Well, exactly. Of course it is. It's far different, but it's like treating it as if it's something that if you don't do anything, exactly.
Eventually, it'll solve itself. I'll just put it
but this is exactly what a lot of commentators said at the time of the election. This is what in fact, a lot of commentators said when he called this snap election, which was obviously just a purely political, like a machination in itself.
But it's also when the left threw together this coalition in a hurry, without any kind of plan or consequences to it. And this was bound to happen. Yeah. There is nothing really. I don't see what he can do right now. There's stagnancy, and basically everyone's putting their foot down, and it's all very obstinate. And I don't see how it gets resolved in a hurry.
It was funny as well, while I was searching for it on Twitter to see what was being said about it on various news sources, and a couple of things came up from this time last year when he was having an absolute crisis because there was rioting on the street and he didn't want to call a state of emergency. I think it's time we actually acknowledge that France is in a bit of a mess. And and yet there is still this perception, isn't there, in the post-Brexit Britain that we are the kind of, the black sheep of the European.
We don't
family.
compare ourselves to it.
We should be far more supremacist as we gaze across the channel. Anyway, The Guardian now, Kerry, they have a tiny glimpse of sunshine amidst the smoking ruins of Gaza.
Yes, OK. So Israeli Bedouin kidnapped by Hamas on 7th October has been reunited with his family. He was found in one of the tunnels. And so, yes, that's a little bit of good news in Israel. But at the same time, if you remember, just like a week or two ago, 6 hostages were recovered who were all dead, and they were found with bullets in them. And this is all going on whilst peace talks look like they're collapsing. Hamas offered to release something like 30 to 60% of the hostages. I think it was 60% it went up to, which is still not to me much of a peace deal. If I kidnapped your whole family and said, hey, let's make peace and call it over, I'll give you some of your family back. That doesn't seem very much helpful.
I've never quite understood what they actually hope to achieve by kidnapping these hostages, other than bringing down this, reign of death and despair.
Well, that's what they hope to achieve. And that was at the same time, of course, as killing hundreds of people, of course, and firing rockets. And the Hezbollah rockets started the next day on October the 8th, which is also very odd, because I'm seeing it reported a lot from mainstream media as Hezbollah are attacking Israel as retaliation for their attack on Gaza. But that's not normal, It's like with Russia and Ukraine. If we were to intervene right now and say, oh, we're doing it as retaliation for your attacking Ukraine, or Poland were to do it, you're in the war.
Yeah.
That is now in the war. That's not, you can't simply dismiss that and say, yeah, it's just retaliation. It's like, no, if a sovereign country attacks another sovereign country, then that's a declaration of war.
Nick?
Well, I just defer to Kerry on this topic because he's an expert, and I don't bother forming very complicated views on it because I have to work with Josh, and I know he'll just sort of... It's not even worth it. But I'm glad the guy's reunited with his family. That's my position.
Fair enough. That's the end of part 2. After the break, we've got Zook coming clean on COVID and some intriguing developments in Venezuelan journalism. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Good evening. From the Met Office, here's your latest GB News weather update. Whilst there is still a bit of rain around for some of us, across parts of the southeast, we're looking ahead to some hot weather tomorrow. That's because we're staying ahead of the front that's lingering across parts of the UK at the moment in the southeast, and so some warm or hot air pushing its way in. But where we're under the front as we go through this evening and overnight, there will be some more cloud and some rain. So particularly across parts of northern England, southern Scotland, but also Wales and the southwest later on, seeing some rain as well. Also some patches of mist and fog here. In the southeast, because of that warmer, hotter air, temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount tonight, and in fact even further north, not turning particularly chilly because of the cloud and some showery rain across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So across Scotland, first thing, yes, there may be some heavier showery bursts perhaps clearing away, but on the whole for many it's starting largely dry, but some showers quickly moving into the far west of Scotland. Also the far west of Northern Ireland having some showers but drier further east, and then that front lingering across northern England bringing a damp start to the day here for some, and down western parts of Wales and southwest England also a bit of wet weather here. Further east though, lots of dry sunny weather to start the day tomorrow, particularly across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, and here it's going to stay largely fine through much of the day. Across the southwest, any rain's likely to break up, and so it's going to turn dry here. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, heavy showery rain pushing its way in from the west. In the southeast, temperatures are going to be higher than today, highs of around 28 or 29 Celsius. As we go into Thursday, there will be more showers across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, perhaps northern and western England and Wales as well. But further south and east, you have a greater chance of staying dry with plenty of fine sunny weather. Temperatures won't be quite as high as tomorrow, but nonetheless feeling pleasantly warm in the sunshine, and there's more fine settled weather to come for most of us as we go through the end of the week. Bye-bye.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m, followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain, followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Oh, hello. Welcome back to Headliners. Nick, the Zook has been beefing up his visible abs and fight skills. Looks like he might be developing a visible backbone too.
Indeed, it's Mark Zuckerberg. COVID censorship was wrong, and I wish I'd fought it. This is his shocking claims that, and this was in a letter to Jim Jordan, who's the House of Representatives head of the Judiciary Committee. And in 2021, Zuckerberg says senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humour and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. And he goes on and on along these lines. And there was even the Hunter Biden story. They demoted this story while it was reviewed by fact-checkers, which he said was a mistake, and other similar things like this. So, in a way, it's shocking that he's not being punished for this. You know, we've got the Telegram CEO arrested. We know they're always after Musk. But it is fascinating because it's a move away from the Democrat. It's another... You have RFK Jr. endorsing Trump, obviously one of the most elite Democrat families in American history. You've got Tulsi Gabbard similarly endorsing Trump. You've got Elon Musk has gone to Trump. Silicon Valley increasingly going to Trump. Now you have Zuckerberg, and you can tell from this, reading into... Not very deeply into this, you can tell he's annoyed with the Democrats. The level of corruption people are just turning against the Democrats.
It's interesting, though. Somebody laid out an almost table of this on Twitter today, on X, saying that these are some of the people who you would never 10 years ago have assumed would be backing Trump or the Republicans. But on the other hand, a number of commentators who are still never-Trumpers who are now backing the Democrats, you know. Sure. A lot of slightly older and more sort of never-Trump conservatives.
Yeah,
Jennifer Rubin.
it's people like Liz Cheney. It's the far less cool, less high-profile people.
So there's this massive... In fact, have you watched RFK Jr.'s interview with Tucker on...
I think so.
It's on X, obviously.
No.
It's like an hour
I watched
and a half.
Tulsi Gabbard's last night.
She's very good. I wish they could get some programme to I know it's a condition, I know I should, but my
AI
goodness,
is voice.
Is so difficult to listen to. But that side is very interesting, and he said, I think correctly, that there is a significant long-term realignment going on now. It's becoming different what it means to be Republican, what it means to be Democrat. It happened under the civil rights legislation, which, of course, he was... You know, he feels very associated with, because that was his father, or rather his brother. His father and his father's brother, in between them.
Because the Democrats are now seen as the party of the rich elites. You know, Chris Cuomo even made that point. They got the rich donors looking down on them.
Amazing in that.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, where did this guy come from?
Whereas, of course, Trump is part of the elite in a sense, and obviously RFK Jr. is, but they're sort of a more benign counter-elite that actually ostensibly cares about the people, whereas the Democrats are just like corruption, Nancy Pelosi's stock picks. It's just out and out.
I mean,
oligarch.
Kennedy has specific issues he's interested in. But Zuckerberg clearly also is talking at this point about COVID rather than acknowledging that he also deliberately swung the election. But
yes, and he did say Trump was badass, didn't he?
Once he's starting to, you know...
And covered the Hunter Biden thing as well. I think he's sort of coming clean here and saying it was a mistake. And I think that's fair enough. There's some key points here where the White House defended its actions in telling him to cover these things up and said, when confronted with a deadly pandemic, this administration encouraged responsible actions to protect public health and safety. And those are the kind of words we're hearing a lot. There's always these very good reasons for justifications for curbing free speech. And also, they at one point say Mr. Biden had accused Facebook of killing people, which I think is interesting because we go to harm very easily, but also if you're saying any theories about COVID, you are a murderer, and that's the extent that we jump to.
There's a nasty flu, so you have to cover up my son's wrongdoings. Sorry, carry on.
Kerry, we have insights from Venezuela now in The Guardian that could have a significant impact on future headliners formats.
Yes. Free speech seems to be our theme tonight, doesn't it? And we're onto a different angle of free speech, because this is what happens on the other side of the coin when you completely, stop, when you have censorship and you stop free speech. And this is in Venezuela. Being on camera is no longer sensible. Persecuted Venezuelan journalists turn to AI. So in Venezuela, of course, all hell's going on with extrajudicial killings and detentions of activists and journalists and suppression of protesters with live ammunition and censorship, closing media outlets, blocking websites, loads of human rights abuses, and particularly following the election, which most serious commentators believe should have gone to Edmundo Gonzalez by a significant margin. And so it's becoming dangerous for reporters to do anything about it. So what they've started doing is creating avatars in order to, I see this going horribly wrong and seeing heartbreaking scenes of avatars being arrested and thrown into virtual prisons. But at the moment they're putting up avatars to put out the news, and
they can't. I mean, I read the story, but I'm slightly puzzled how it actually looks in real life. I presume that they aren't sort of on location, but with an avatar over their face or something.
Well, you've got to have a secret location where they're doing this from. I imagine maybe they're out of the country or something. I don't think they're going to tell us here where they are.
So this isn't the... No, but what I mean is, they're not actually reporting on the stuff live. This is like what you might have as a thumbnail photograph at the top of a column, or...
No, I think it's a talking AI. It's an avatar, much like... have you not been to see Abba Voyage?
Right. I don't believe they would have that technology in Venezuelan newsrooms.
Well,
I'm sorry.
If they had ABBA.
Have you not seen well, I think it could be. I mean, have you seen those AIs on Twitter and stuff where they say this person isn't real and they look incredibly real? It could be that.
Photograph looks real.
No, even video now looks incredibly real.
Yeah.
So you think they just make one of those, put it on the screen,
could do,
and
it talks. Yeah, I imagine.
And it generates for real. Yeah.
And this is to avoid people finding out which journalist has said this, following them home, and
because I mean, a couple of things. Isn't it ironic? This is in The Guardian, given one, that they back Venezuela-style policies, and two, that they back cancel culture so strongly.
Yeah.
Because I feel in Starmer's Britain like I should be an AI, and that would have been the better way to go. And now I'm out. I might retreat into AI myself, because you don't really feel that safe, do you, tweeting anymore?
No, well, I mean, also, I've probably passed my best as well. It's cheaper than getting work done, isn't it? All kinds of little advantages. I would, listen, if I could create an ABBA Voyage stand-up, to tour the country.
Yes.
I would be.
Oh, yes. That's the future. Stay at home and send our avatars out.
And I'd be just sitting there with a couple of joysticks at home, just making it make eye contact with the second.
I think well done for finding an answer.
Davros, whatever it's called. Kind of Davros or whatever, just controlling your fleet of Simon Evans.
Darlings. Yeah. Entertain.
What was that?
Times now, Nick. Blatant Marxist praxis is putting the red into the British Red Cross.
Yeah, this is just your woke red meat. British Red Cross tells staff, stop saying maiden name and pensioner. Oh. This is a 12-page handbook, so 12-page. Speaking about dense text, it's a 12-page opus.
I hate long handbooks.
People, and of course, it's advising, I say of course, because we're so used to this stuff, employees are advised to say women, girls, and people who menstruate, or people who have periods, rather than solely referring to women, and more, this is my favourite. Guidance also asks staff to avoid the term illegal migration, instead includes person in search of safety or person experiencing migration, which probably is how it feels. You sort of wonder, are these policies or just natural acts? People are just in a kind of flow of air, experiencing migration and being pushed around the world.
No, I'm experiencing.
And or from a minoritized ethnic group, you can say, or global majority. I always think they have to be very careful with global majority, because once we notice where the minority, we're going to start demanding rights.
Well, you're right. Every single one of those phrases is loaded in its own way, and I do find it amusing but also sinister that they say that they just assert without evidence that this language is inclusive. For every one person who feels included by people who have periods, hundreds are feeling like they live with in some kind of weird, like post-dystopic, wasteland.
We always change words, but this is an obsession now, isn't it? It's speeding up, and what's interesting is we're not doing it with men. Only with women. So you can imagine standing in front of an audience and say, people who menstruate and gentlemen.
Yeah.
But the gentleman's fine.
The ladies and gentlemen's banned as well.
People who shake their...
Ladies and gentlemen's banned, but not the gentlemen.
But not gentlemen.
It's the ladies part of it. That seems so offensive. Right. The other one is elderly, youngster and pensioner are somehow offensive now. And I've heard this one before. You're supposed to say older. But it's really hard in conversation to be clear that you're talking about someone who's a lot older. So you have to say considerably older. Because
you start referring to elders, but that implies a certain amount of tribal wisdom. That
he's an elder, an elder doesn't have the same connotation.
I mean, I think there is a prostate haver, if you want equal opportunities.
You're not even allowed to say born a man or woman, or biological male or female. How on earth does anyone know what you're even talking about at that point?
Do you know what, though? It's in that thing about experiencing migration. It does tie in with that lack of agency that certain people are perceived to have, which is exactly what underpins two-tier policing. As soon as you say somebody is experiencing migration, they have not made any kind of decisive moves in their life.
Yeah.
You can then again say they are experiencing hunger, and now that's why they're shoplifting and all this,
I'd feel good if I got on a boat and risked my life, and then you said you're experiencing migration. Like, mate, I risked my life there. I did loads. You know what I mean? You've done loads. You've got on a boat. You've paid loads of money to a pirate.
Staying with the times now, Kerry, the Edinburgh Festival are the latest to discover that the SNP stands for suggestions, not promises.
Edinburgh Festival may collapse. Sorry, you have your moment then. Due to SNP's broken funding pledges. The Edinburgh International Festival risks being dismantled, as Executive Director has warned, because of the SNP administration's failure to honour its funding pledges, which has been promised now by Hamza Yousaf and by John Sweeney, and the SNP before it was saying that that fund of 6.6 million would go back into the festival, which of course it isn't happening. Nowadays, if you go there, you have to pay about $1 million for accommodation anyway, so it's not really going to help. It's getting untouchable. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's absurd. I understand this is the international festival, not the Fringe, so they're talking about bringing over world-class opera productions and what have you. It's a slightly different calculation. But they could get the infrastructure of Scotland so much better, just in order to support a festival. That would be the first thing.
But it's also so many people going up there now that I'm hearing from, or they either, really, they're not going up there at all. They either live there or they have a friend who lives there who they can rent a flat out from.
Yeah.
But I feel also that I think a lot of the artists feel kind of cheated because they put so much time and money into this festival. You think from the university's point of view, how many universities in the country would love to be able to rent out almost every single room as a venue by the hour and not lose any money for a month?
Yeah.
That's a fortune in itself.
Absolutely.
And of course, the comedians and the other artists do lose money if they don't get the audience, but they still have to pay that venue money.
Yeah.
So It's time, really, that the local government there are at least putting something back into it and rewarding the artists who spent so much there.
They seem to be determined. I think some other comedian, I can't remember who it was, said they've grabbed the golden goose by the neck and they're trying to give it a hysterectomy.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Did you have a view on that, Nick?
No, then I hate the festival, I hate the greed, and it prioritises leftist activism.
This is the international festival, which is quite high culture. This is not quite the Fringe.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, well...
This is what the Fringe was the Fringe of originally.
I would shut it all down.
But no, I mean, it's still, you know, it should be able to work. The Edinburgh's got an absolute cash cow there, and it seems determined to screw it up. The world-beating fragility of Robin DiAngelo now, as she's accused of plagiarising academics of colour.
Yes, anti-racism author accused of plagiarising ethnic minority academics. Who would have guessed? So, Robin DiAngelo, who wrote this awful, poisonous book, White Fragility, which is behind a lot of the...
Don't hold back.
No, I better not. It's behind so much of this woke garbage we have to deal with, and this, you know, critical race theory nonsense. Well, in her doctoral thesis, she looks like she may have lifted, allegedly, 2 paragraphs from Thomas Nakayama, an Asian-American professor. And they are, I've read them both, they are incredibly similar. Both mean nothing, but in very, very similar language. And there's a few other instances as well which look very plagiarisy to the layman, allegedly satirical content. But yes, because it's not confirmed, but it's in a thesis, you know, you're younger, you're like, oh, this is long and boring, I better just... It can happen, is all I'm saying.
All this stuff has been plagiarised from Judith Butler anyway, isn't it? True. To make some... and just pour it out on the page.
It's all unreadable nonsense.
That didn't make sense in the first place, yes.
Yeah.
It's like plagiarising astrology readings. It really doesn't make much difference, does it? But
well put. That's the final, the third section, just the final section to go with scientific resurrection prospects and fish on Prozac. What a world. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Should footballers just stop taking the knee? It's time for our head-to-head.
I don't want to see people on their knees. I want to see the FA or UEFA or all of those FIFA all leading from the top. And that would be that if half of the players, and it's practically half of them, are of colour, why is that not even remotely replicated at the top? So to me, I just see it as an empty gesture. What is the point of it? It's been going on for years and still not much has happened. And the bottom line is this: these clubs are rich. Football is rich. Everything. If they really wanted to prosecute racists on the terraces, they really could, and they haven't. And they've had years to do it. So why would getting down on one knee now change it? It's not changing anything. It needs to start from the top, and it hasn't.
I do wonder, Jason, whether or not it has much of an impact. I mean, at the start of games or in the highlight shows, etc., match of the day, it does seem like, you know, right, OK, so we'll take the knee and the commentator will go out of his way or her way to tell us what a wonderful thing this is. And, you know, suspiciously at times I do wonder whether or not the fan sound goes down, because I've been at a few football games where it's not been that well received, but you don't tend to see that in the highlight shows. And then there might be a round of applause to something else, and there might be something else going on, and eventually we get a bit of football, you know. Do the fans actually like this?
I don't know. You have to ask them, to be honest. I think there are many different people why they boo. That people do think it's virtual signalling, that it's done for show. But I think that it can only be a good thing in my mind that we are discussing this, and we all realise I think in 100 years' time, this conversation could still be going on. There still needs to be work done. There still needs to make sure that the Argentinian national side to be singing racist songs about black African-American footballers that now play for the French national side are getting racially abused. That tells me only one thing, that the message is still not getting across.
GB News.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners for the final section. Kerry will kick off with this story. No coincidence that it hits the press on the same day that the Oasis come back from
Professor claims we are fundamentally wrong about death. He's a 500-year-old man. No, he's not. Professor Parnia, he wrote a book about lucid dying. Doesn't sound quite so lucid himself. And he says that the brain after death is salvageable, not only for hours, but possibly days at a time, which is nice to know that we might have a salvageable brain after you die. And he said, why should I stay dead? That's not necessary anymore. This is the voice of someone who's not completely mad, but I'm pretty sure he's got an evil laugh.
Lucid dying, I mean, it just sounds like complete grift, doesn't it? If you're trying to explain it, don't bring lucid in from
Oh, exactly, yeah.
Did you also know when he said, look, I tell everyone I'm going to have a cardiac arrest soon? I mean, that's a kind of an odd thing to say. Isn't it? Stop eating all the burgers and the bacon.
This is a Wendy's,
It was a bit fatalistic.
He insists he's completely serious. You shouldn't have to insist, should you? You should be able to do it. I'm obviously serious. I'm a scientist.
Yeah, I do agree with him, though, because I watched a few podcasts, basically, with that guy, Aubrey de Grey, and he had a big beard, so I was convinced by him. And he said that ageing is just a form of damage, and we should be able to fix it.
Yeah.
From then on, I thought we could fix it. On the flip side, that those transhumanist people are a bit freaky, aren't they? Like Noval, what's he called? Yoval thingy.
Yuval Harari.
Him. Yeah. He's always a bit... They freak me out, these transhumans, like, yeah, we can live forever. And they're always kind of weirdos, so that's against it.
You'll live longer in your pension will run out anyway. It's absolutely pointless and useless.
Yeah.
It's all about your telomeres and your mitochondrial DNA or something.
Yeah. Would you want to live forever if it was in Starmer's Britain? That's a question.
As the very old and well, circulated saying goes, people think about trying to be immortal who can't think of what to do on a long, wet Sunday afternoon, you know.
Yes.
I hate to say Alex Jones was right again, but it begins to look like he was. Here we go, Nick.
They're turning the frickin' fish happy. That's all I can say. I wonder if you go with that reference. Yeah, it's Prozac in waterways is changing how fish behave, research finds. Basically, they're giving fluoxetine, not giving it, but it gets into a fish, and it reduces the body condition and sperm vitality of male guppies over multiple generations, and we can't have that. So they're all on Prozac, and they don't, their lives are they're living in a haze of Xanax and Prozac, and they're unmarried and they're watching Sex in the City.
Less depressed, yes.
Right, but their sperm is a mess.
This has been happening. I mean, Alex Jones was right years ago on this, wasn't he? I've got a perfectly scientific book. I can't remember what it's called, but it starts with them fishing alligators out of the Florida swamp that all have unusable, deformed, tiny genitals. It's really sad. We are genuinely destroying our wildlife.
Totally. But it's also sad to look at their genitals like that.
Weird.
Imagine you're a crocodile and you're so sort of fearsome, and then you've got malformed, tiny...
Would it make you more or less fearsome?
Horribly embarrassing.
Question. Carrie, I suspect I can see what the gag is going to be here, but please talk us through hyperfatigue.
Absolutely not. Are you suffering from hyperfatigue? As experts say, it's the new epidemic. Everyone's got it, apparently. They're basically suggesting you sleep on it. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah. That's not what it was going to be. And they tell you what is, and there's a whole long explanation about what hyperfatigue is. It's extreme tiredness, and it's being caused by everything. And the things you should do about it is avoid caffeine, get enough sleep, and eat sensibly, and all the things you would guess without reading this.
All the things I'm not doing.
Don't eat too many guppies.
Yes. Yep. I read this and I'm like, I definitely have this. Because I had a 2-week holiday, I felt great. I came back a couple of days with Lewis. You're knackered.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are certain toxic elements that you have to get out of your life.
It's all no fun.
Hong Kong news. This might be our last story. Let's see how it goes. We are, of course, being encouraged to snigger at their attempts to encourage sexual hygiene in the young.
Yeah, this is Hong Kong teenagers told to play badminton to master their sexual desires. I love that phrase. So basically, they're turning to shuttlecocks rather than... Anyway, I can't complete that joke at 5 a.m. But yeah. And I think it's a great idea. And I haven't really read it, but I think it'll work. It's I love...
It's a sort of 1950s approach.
Yeah.
They're basically encouraging young people to do strenuous exercise when they feel the urge rising. But these are 14-year-olds, so I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea.
It'll work better than beach volleyball, I'll tell you that for sure. It wouldn't work for me because I'm turned on by bald-headed women in wedding dresses, and that's what the shuttlecock makes me think of, really.
But they have a problem in East Asia that their fertility rate is plummeting, so they're obviously trying to keep kids bottled up until ready for marriage, and then in they go and start...
it does seem counterintuitive, doesn't it, that they want to master their sexual desires when they need to get that birth rate up.
Yeah.
But you're just going to have loads of scenes now of teenagers furiously playing badminton.
Well, that's the best way to win at badminton, is play it furiously, isn't it? That's probably what they're thinking. Get that Olympic team.
What it's really about.
Because you're up against China, and they've always taken loads of drugs, so you've got to win the Olympics with pent-up sexual, repression.
Is Hong Kong its own competitor in that is part of China anyway, isn't it?
Oh, well, that's controversial, isn't it?
Go on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, good point. I was thinking of something else.
Show it nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages. We have The Times, German deal to turn the corner on Brexit. We have The Guardian, time for the UK to turn corner on Brexit, says Starmer. Daily Mail, finally Starmer comes clean, he'll soak the middle class. Daily Telegraph, Starmer's tax alert for Middle England. Metro, stars align, the wait is over, Oasis are back, and finally Daily Star, ET invaders would wipe us all out. Those were your front pages. That is it for tonight's show. Thanks to my guest, Carrie-Anne Nick. Andrew Doyle will be here tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Steve N. Allen and Nick Dixon. If you have been watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, thank you very much for your company. I've been Simon Evans. See you again next week. Thank you. Good night.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. From the Met Office, here's your latest GB News weather update. Whilst there is still a bit of rain around for some of us across parts of the southeast, we're looking ahead to some hot weather tomorrow. That's because we're staying ahead of the front that's lingering across parts of the UK at the moment in the southeast, and so some warm or hot air pushing its way in. But where we're under the front as we go through this evening and overnight, there will be some more cloud and some rain. So particularly across parts of northern England, southern Scotland, but also Wales and the southwest later on, seeing some rain as well. Also some patches of mist and fog here. In the southeast, because of that warmer, hotter air, temperatures aren't going to drop a huge amount tonight, and in fact even further north, not turning particularly chilly because of the cloud and some showery rain across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. So across Scotland, first thing, yes, there may be some heavier showery bursts perhaps clearing away, but on the whole for many it's starting largely dry, but some showers quickly moving into the far west of Scotland. Also the far west of Northern Ireland having some showers but drier further east, and then that front lingering across northern England bringing a damp start to the day here for some, and down western parts of Wales and southwest England also a bit of wet weather here. Further east though, lots of dry sunny weather to start the day tomorrow, particularly across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast, and here it's going to stay largely fine through much of the day. Across the southwest, any rain's likely to break up, and so it's going to turn drier here. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, heavy showery rain pushing its way in from the west. In the southeast, temperatures are going to be higher than today, highs of around 28 or 29 Celsius. As we go into Thursday, there will be more showers across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland, perhaps northern and western England and Wales as well. But further south and east, you have a greater chance of staying dry with plenty of fine sunny weather. Temperatures won't be quite as high as tomorrow, but nonetheless feeling pleasantly warm in the sunshine, and there's more fine settled weather to come for most of us as we go through the end of the week. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash, and you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
Oh, I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'd buy you